Okay, question number 7 is asking a somewhat strange question. It says, Jose is writing a reply function for a text messaging app. He'd like to swap the sender and receiver so that the value currently in the variable from ends up as the variable in to, and to ends up in from. So it's a swapping algorithm that you need to create. Now, the next actual question says, which of the following code segments will correctly swap the values as described? So what would be prudent to do here is to follow the steps on each one. So let's say we try A, and A says we're going to start off with Bruce Wayne as the to and James Bond as the from. Now, if we do, and that's the initial step. Step number 1 tells you that to becomes from. This is to is set to from. So the original to was Bruce Wayne, but the from is borrowed to make James Bond, and nothing happens to from. It's James Bond. That's step number 1. Step number 2 says from is set to. That's what from equals to means. You're making from what to is. Well, in step 2, it's going to be a little bit different. From is now going to become what to is. So that means from is still going to be James Bond because they're both James Bond. And nothing happened in to, so it's still James Bond. So if we follow A, the code set in A, we have both of them set to the recipient, the sender. And we don't actually switch them around. As a matter of fact, you cannot do this. You cannot do what it's asking unless you create a temporary variable, which B, C, D, and E all say you do. So we're going to start this all over again. But now we know that there has to be some sort of variable, some temp variable. So we have to, we have from, and then we have some temp variable. We know A is wrong, so we're going to go ahead and cut all that out. We don't need it anymore. And let's look at B. First, let's start off with the first statement. From is equal to variable temp. That's not going to work because we haven't made the variable. The variable has to be made first before you can use it. So B is already out. We don't have to worry about it. Let's look at C, D, and E. C, D, and E all establish the variable from the very beginning. So those can all be passable. But we're going to have to find out which one makes the most sense. So let's do C. Variable temp is equal to from. Well, let's initialize it again. At first, we have James Bond. Oh, excuse me. I have that backwards. At first, we have James Bond as our from, and Bruce Wayne as our to. And according to the very first step on C, the variable temp is initialized and it is stolen from. Then the next thing that happens in step number 1 is that from is set to. Again, the equals is set to. So from is set to. So the original from now is changed to whatever to was, which is now Bruce Wayne. Notice it hasn't said anything about the temp file or the to file. Now let's read line 2 in the code. Then it says to is set to from. So to now becomes whatever from is. Except from is still Bruce Wayne, so it didn't help us out here because we didn't actually use the temp file. So C is wrong as well. Let's hope D actually does what we're supposed to do. So D says variable temp is from, which is the same thing as the previous one. But let's see if this, so we don't have to change the first two. Bruce Wayne is to, James Bond is from, and the temporary file is from because that's where what the first one says, the initial line of code says. Now, step 1 says from is set to 2. So from becomes, from is set to 2. Which means from now becomes whatever 2 was, which is Bruce Wayne. Nothing happens to 2 because we don't set it, we don't change anything to it. The temporary file is still also James Bond. And then 2 is set to the temp. So 2 now becomes whatever the temporary file was, which in this case is James Bond. Bruce Wayne is now from, and even though we won't ever actually print it, it doesn't matter, but the temporary is still James Bond. But this one does switch the Bruce Wayne and the James Bond to the opposite forms. Alright guys, see you in the next one.